Hi everyone, Andy's the Sewing Doc here, and we are going to get right into this video. This is one of my most favorite things to teach because I can tell you from personal experience, this changed everything for me in quilting. I know I say that in a lot of my videos, but if you can't get a good 1/4 inch seam, then everything else is much harder to accomplish. So over the years, I've learned many tricks. I have tried many methods, and I'm going to offer a few different options for you today. So let's talk first about the 1/4 inch foot. And this one that you see here has the typical little, I don't know what you call this little metal guide here. So when you put this on your machine, you should be able to run your fabric right along that little guide. I have a couple different issues with this method, and there's a reason why I never use it. One, if this little piece here is of such a thin aluminum, if you bump that a hair and it bends even just a hair, you're using that to guide your fabric. So if you end up being 1/8 of an inch off here just because this guide got bent, your entire quilt is going to be off. So that's number one. Number two, depending on where your needle sits, may not be the same. It may not be a 1/4 inch from the needle to the edge, just depending on how it sits. My biggest issue, so let's just say we even use one of those plastic feet that didn't have the guide. My biggest issue with this is when you're using this to sew your 1/4 inch seam, by the time you get to where you're guiding your 1/4 inch through, you're already at your needle. So you have all this time down here to waver because you have no other guide other than this little tiny guide right here. So in my opinion, you need to be looking at your 1/4 inch seam all the way down here so you have a nice smooth guide to run by. So what we're going to do, this is the Ideal Seam Guide, or Seam Gauge. There's a couple different versions out there. This is from the Sew Very Smooth company. I actually had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman at Quilt Market last spring in St. Louis. His wife is a quilter, and now he has learned to do a little quilting himself, but he came up with this really nifty seam guide. What you see here is you see a number of measurements where you can measure your seam, and each one has a hole in it with an arrow pointing to the edge of the template. What we're going to do, and this works on all machines, it doesn't matter if it's antique, vintage, modern, computerized, what have you. And we're going to put this in. We're going to work on, oh, and the other thing I want to mention about this particular ruler that I like better than the others on the market, this is the only one that has a scant 1/4 inch. There's a 1/4 inch and a scant 1/4 inch. And if you know anything about trying to master that scant 1/4 inch, this will save you a whole lot of time, because that scant versus regular 1/4 inch is literally about a thread. So we're going to work on just regular 1/4 inch. What we're going to do is place this on our machine, and here where this little, the hole is for 1/4 inch, we're going to put our needle down inside that hole, and it may take a little, oh, I got it on the first try. It may take a few tries. What else I'm going to do is along right here, you'll see on, most of us have a guide on our machine. Mine happens to line up almost exactly with that line. You want to make sure that your template is straight on this edge here. And then I'm going to stick my foot down so it'll stay. All right. Now we have a few options. Now we know that from this needle to the edge of this template is exactly 1/4 inch. So now we have a few different options on how we're going to actually mark our seam. If you're interested in the Ideal Seam Guide products, this gentleman here also makes one specific to featherweights and antique machines. One, it's the size. If you lay this down and use it as a guide, it's meant to sit so that none of your decals are sitting under it, okay? So that's number one. Number two, there is a reusable adhesive on the back. If you peel this strip off right here, it's really hard to see. If you peel this strip off, there is an adhesive under there that he says you get about 60 to 80 uses. So you can lay it down, stick it on your machine. It's acid free so that it will not damage your finish. And then you can pull it up and keep reusing it, okay? And he does actually have right here, some directions on what to do with it. And he does, I do remember in one of his videos, he does say if the sticky starts to wear off, you're going to want to just clean it with a multi-surface cleaner to remove the lint off of it, and then you'll be okay. So this is one option. If you like a nice, strong, thick seam guide, this is it. The reason that there's a cutout on this side, if you're doing some sort of special technique or special foot and this needs to sit around your feed dogs, you can actually sit this in as far as you need with your feed dogs. So this is usable on all machines, but specifically geared towards the featherweight because of the finish and the decals. So that's one option. Another option is using just regular blue painter's tape. So this is, you know, the stuff that you get at Walmart or Home Depot. Even Dollar Tree has some. Although I will say I don't like the Dollar Tree so much. They comes off in shreds. So I'm just going to take a length of blue tape and we're going to stick this down. Make sure it's right up against your seam guide. And you're going to want to, again, make sure it is very straight because this is what matters. So we're going to do this. And this is, so now we have a beautiful straight seam. And when you take your seam guide out, now whenever you sew your seam, you are starting all the way down here. And you can run your fabric all the way up when you're sewing and keep track of where you're at the whole length. This is the real value in getting your seams to be straight and consistent. Now I'm going to show you one other thing. I do this a lot. My most favorite is using Post-it notes. So I'm going to stick this back in on my 1/4 inch seam. Not so lucky in getting in that hole on the first try this time. Probably because I'm having a hard time seeing here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to line my seam guide up straight. This is my super secret weapon here. This is just a stack of cheap Post-it notes. The reason I like this is because I like to have a little bit of an edge. So let's say about 6 pages here, okay? So I have just a little bit of a ledge. We're going to butt that up. This is so easy. With the tape, you almost kind of have to waver a little bit and get it straight. With Post-it notes, because it's got a firm edge, it's so easy to lay down. And then you're going to take your seam guide out. And it's going to be the exact same thing as using your tape, but now I have a little bit of a ledge as a guide. But I am an obsessive pinner. I'm a precision piecer, so on a square like this, I'm probably going to have at least 2 pins. And I like to, I'm not going to lie, I use fine patchwork pins so that I can sew over my pins. If I have this seam guide here, I can't keep my pins in and sew over that because they're just going to jam up my pins over here on the edge. With the Post-it notes, I get the best of both worlds. My pins are going to glide over the top of this, but there's just enough of a ledge that I can feel it. Okay, now the other thing I like is that when this starts to wear down and get where it won't stick anymore, all you do is you peel off that bottom sheet, and guess what? I still have a whole stack of Post-it notes that I can use. And Post-it notes are very cheap. So those are the 3 ways that I suggest perfecting your 1/4 inch seam. There are definitely reasons why I would use the foot. One of them is usually if you do half square triangles a certain way, or if there's a certain technique that you need the guide where it's in the middle of the fabric rather than starting with a seam. But 9 times out of 10, any of these, marking your seam using a seam guide and then putting something down is going to give you a much more consistent 1/4 inch seam than using a 1/4 inch foot. So if you have any questions, please leave us comments below. You can also find our other videos at sewingdoc.com, and you are always welcome to contact us with your questions or any way that we can help you. And as always, if you're in the Marietta, Georgia area, please stop in and see us at Red Hen Stitch Shop, just off the square, and give us a call at the shop, 770-794-8549. Thank you.